Melanie here for Storytime Saturday. As always, I'm so happy to see you once again, and I'm excited because today I'm hoping to cover we're gonna cover two subjects in our Passport to Reading, and we've been traveling through the subjects. Last Saturday was nature, and today it's gonna be people and places. And with it being February, and you just had a holiday off, which was President's Day, that you celebrated Abraham Lincoln and George Washington's birthday. So I figured I'm going to pick out of our people section a book on Abraham Lincoln. He just had a birthday on February 12th, and we have George Washington here, who's going to have a birthday on February 22nd. So I talk a little bit about him, and then cover a little bit about the place that you can find Lincoln, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. So, people, places, sometimes they go hand in hand with each other. So that's why I decided maybe just to do a 2-in-1 story. Also, if you notice over here, I have arrows going like crazy. But this is a lot of what we've got, the breakdown of what you'll find in our people subject area. And if you look, I broke it down even like you'll find books on family, friends, teachers, helpers, heroes. But if you think about it, if you put yourself in the middle of all these titles, you fit in there. You're a friend, you're a family member, you're a teacher, and maybe not a school teacher, but you're always teaching yourself and you're teaching others more than you're aware of. You're a helper to your friends, to your family, to your community, and whether you like to believe it or not, you're a hero. And may not always go right. You may not always know it or recognize it, but I'm going to tell you, you're a hero. So, but we do have books on superheroes as well here. So I thought I'd break that down and show that so that you know what you'd be looking for or what you'd be looking at when you look in the people section. And then when you look in the place section, you're going to find books on farms and parks and schools and libraries and places in the cities and in the U.S. and states and things on Washington, D.C. where you'll find the sky, his statue, the Lincoln Memorial. So you'll find, come on in, get downstairs here at the Children's Library and start looking at some of these. Okay, so we're going to get started here. Inside the book has a very famous speech, the Gettysburg Address, and I'll talk a little on that in here. This book is written by Myra Kelman, looking at Lincoln. Tall man he was. Alright, here we go. One day while walking through the park on my way to breakfast, I saw a very tall man. He reminded me of someone, but I could not think who. With a very tall hat, huh? At the coffee shop, I ordered pancakes. They were delicious. We paid with a Lincoln $5 bill and 2 Washingtons $1 bills. And then I remembered the man I had seen looked exactly like Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Who was he? I went to the library to find out. Abraham Lincoln was such an amazing man that there are over 16,000 books written about him. I wanted to read them all, but I got lost in photos of his unusual face. I stared at one, and I looked at him forever. Sounds like a big Lincoln fan, huh? He was born in a small log cabin in Kentucky on February 12, 1809. The family was poor. Abe was a dreamer. He did not like to do chores, He loved to read. He was lucky. His stepmother loved him like crazy, and he adored her. She looked so stern, but she let him dream and read as much as he wanted. He went to school for only 1 year, but he was curious and taught himself many things. They had hardly any supplies, and of course, no electricity. Abraham spent many hours reading by the fire's glow. So there he's got a book in hand, right, sitting by the fire. One day, he was kicked in the head by a mule. He slept for 2 days. Then he woke up and grew up and decided to be a lawyer. He didn't like to argue. So he was 10 when that happened. That's a little story on that in the back of the book. He lived in Springfield, Illinois, and got a reputation as a smart and honest man. They called him Honest Abe. He had a family that loved him very much. His wife, Mary, who was very short, and 4 sons. They laughed and had lots of friends and even ran around a little wild. I wonder if Mary and Abraham had nicknames for each other. Did she call him Winky? Did he call her Little Plumpy? Maybe. Abe worked hard and became interested in the government. He decided he would run for president, and on March 4th, 1861, he was inaugurated President of the United States. Now Inauguration Day happens in January. On the day he was elected, I bet Mary made his favorite vanilla cake, but maybe he forgot to eat his slice. He was often too busy thinking to eat. Lincoln wore a very tall hat, and with his hat on, he was 7 feet tall. He wrote many notes and stuffed them inside his hat. What was he thinking about? Could you imagine all those notes that could fit in that hat? Many, many, many. He was thinking about democracy, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution created by the founders of this country. He was thinking about freedom and doing good for mankind. And maybe he was also thinking about getting a birthday present for his little son. Maybe a whistle or pickup sticks. What did he love? He loved his dog Fido. I think Fido was cross-eyed. He loved apples, Cox orange pippins, white pippins, winesap, and banani. He always had an apple on his desk. He loved music. He loved Mozart, especially his opera, The Magic Flute. But mostly he loved people. His family, of course, but all people. He wanted them to live well. He loved justice and truth. The country was in trouble and headed for a war. After hundreds of years of slavery, people were saying, enough. There were courageous people who fought for liberty like Sojourner Truth and Frederick Douglass, who had been a slave until he ran away to the north. Both of them met with Lincoln and spoke of the flight of slaves. They wanted the freedom of slaves. Lincoln hated slavery and wrote to a friend, "If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong." During his presidency, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, the first official step toward freeing millions of slaves. It was a difficult time to be president. The southern states, the Confederacy, wanted their own country where slavery was allowed. Lincoln said, "No, we must stay one country." The northern states, the Union, believed that slavery should be abolished, and so they went to war. In a museum, I saw the uniform of one of the first soldiers killed in the Civil War. Here is a bullet hole at the point of his heart. There were 14 brass buttons on the front of his tunic. One was shot away, and 13 brass buttons remained. The soldier's name was Elmer Elphin Ellsworth. Terrible things happened in a war. The Civil War ground on. Lincoln went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the site of a big battle. Thousands of soldiers were buried there, and many were just a number on their grave. A number, no name. On that sad land, Lincoln gave one of history's greatest speeches, the Gettysburg Address. It was short, only 272 words, ending with, and here it is in the front, ending with, government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The war finally ended in 1865. Almost 1 million people had been killed or wounded. The North had won. The people had suffered greatly, but now it was time to rejoice and start to rebuild the country with Lincoln leading the way. But it was not to be. After the agony of the war, Lincoln wanted to lighten the mood. He took his wife to see a funny play, and during that play he was shot, murdered by a wretched man who did not want slavery to end. Lincoln had been rocking in this chair, and people carried him across the street to the home of a friend. He died the next morning, April 15th, 1865, and he was 56 years old. The news spread. People across the land wept with grief for their fallen leader, but a great man is never really gone. Abraham Lincoln will live forever, and if you go to Washington, D.C. in the spring, you can walk through the cherry blossoms and visit him. It's a pretty picture. At his memorial, you can read the words he wrote near the end of the war. With malice toward none, with charity for all. And you can look into his beautiful eyes and just look. I think you could look into his eyes and see that he had a love for his country. And on the back are notes through that talk a little bit further, talk more into what was discussed, what we talked about during our story. So it talks a little bit more about his log cabin, his stepmother, his children, his dog, his favorite cake, the vanilla almond that Mary made for him. It talks about the Gettysburg Address, his funeral, the Civil War uniforms, gives a little more details on Abraham Lincoln and his stories. And with saying February, where we celebrated President's Day, in January, of course, we had Martin Luther King Day, and we celebrated that on the 18th. His birthday, though, is on the 15th in January. And in February also, we do celebrate Black History Month. So we have many different stories on many different individuals and their significance to America. And just come down here, and I have them all here right as you come in the children's library, and check them out. And whether you're into math or science or history or anything, any sports, we have it here, guys. So come check it out. We're just wrapping up Passport to Reading here next week. And then I have a couple programs I'll talk to you about more than next Saturday. So have a good rest of your weekend. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.